The first thing they noticed wasn't the tray in her hand. It was the limp, a soft, hidden drag of her left foot as she pushed through the diner doors, pretending nothing hurt. Pretending she wasn't bleeding through the bandage beneath her black tights. The bell above the entrance chimed once, sharp, too loud, as 4 cartel enforcers walked in behind her. Not loud men, not sloppy, the kind whose silence carried more weight than guns ever could. People in the diner froze. Forks paused mid-air. Even the jukebox stuttered, but the men weren't looking at anyone. They were looking at her, the black waitress in the faded apron, the one biting the inside of her cheek to mask the pain, the one who winced only when she thought no one was watching, except someone was. The tallest of the cartel men, Ramon, the one locals whispered about, tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing as he watched her stumble for half a second. Not drunk, not clumsy, injured, and trying hard to hide it. She reached the counter just as her knee buckled. The mug slipped from her hand, shattering across the tiles. Everyone flinched, everyone except them. Ramon stepped forward slowly, boots echoing across the diner floor. Not threatening, not soft either, just deliberate. "Who hurt you?" His voice didn't rise, didn't shake, but the whole diner went quiet, a dead, heavy quiet, like even the walls were afraid to breathe. The waitress froze, chest trembling, eyes dropping to the floor as if staring at the pieces might make her disappear. Ramon looked at her limp again, looked at the bruises half hidden under her sleeve. Looked at the fear she tried to swallow down. And something dangerous shifted behind his eyes, not anger at her, anger for her. His men straightened in unison, their hands dropping instinctively near their jackets, not to threaten her, but to prepare for whoever had done this. The entire diner watched, stunned, as Ramon spoke again. Softer this time, almost protective. "Tell me his name." And that was the moment everyone realized. The cartel hadn't come in for food. They hadn't come to terrorize. They had come because a black waitress was limping, and that alone was enough to unleash something no one in that town was ready for. Wait. Before we go deeper, if this story already has you hooked, hit subscribe right now. And tell us where you're watching from in the comments. I want to welcome you, specially. Today's shout-out goes to Marie from Mexico. Here on this channel, you're not just watching stories, you're part of them. Stay with me. Every story is bigger than the last, and I want you to be here when the next twist drops. The limp had gotten worse that night. Amara tried to hide it, slipping behind the counter every time she felt the sharp pull beneath her knee. The diner lights were too bright, buzzing softly, like they were judging her with every step. Her apron hung crooked, and her left shoe was worn so thin she could feel every crack in the linoleum through the sole. She kept smiling anyway. That's what the customers looked for. The smile, not the pain. Pain was invisible if you pretended hard enough. But tonight she couldn't pretend as well as she used to. It was close to midnight when the door chimed, not the soft, rusty chime she was used to, but a sharper, heavier sound, as if the air itself stiffened. A gust of cold wind slipped in from outside, carrying traces of engine oil, cologne, and something darker that had no scent, only presence. 4 men stepped inside. They didn't rush, they didn't speak, they didn't even look around. They walked with quiet authority, head straight, shoulders squared, steps synchronized in a way that made regular people's stomachs tighten. The Sombra cartel. Even their shadows felt heavy. Conversations died mid-sentence. Coffee cups stopped halfway to lips. A waitress near the jukebox backed up so fast she dropped 2 spoons, but Amara didn't see them enter. She was bent over a table, gathering plates with one hand pressed against her thigh, discreetly holding the spot where the pain shot the hardest. She sucked in a slow breath through her teeth. The kind of breath someone takes when they're used to hurting and used to pretending it's normal. When she stood up, the limp came back. A soft drag. Barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking. But someone was looking. Ramon saw it first. He was the tallest of the 4, quiet, focused, with the expression of a man who'd seen enough violence to know exactly what it leaves behind. He didn't walk like a criminal, he walked like a soldier who'd learned control the hard way. His eyes scanned the room once, noting exits, angles, threats, habits carved into him long before tonight. Then he saw her, the limp, the strain. The way her hand trembled as she balanced a tray with 3 mugs of coffee. Something flickered in his expression, not curiosity, not attraction, but recognition. The kind that comes from understanding pain without needing to ask questions. The men behind him slowed their stride. They followed his gaze, noticing her too. Amara moved toward the counter. She had only a few more steps left when her knee betrayed her. Her leg gave out for half a second. She tried to catch herself, but the weight of the tray shifted. The mug on the edge slipped, tumbling toward the floor. It hit hard. A crack echoed across the diner. Coffee splashed over her shoes and apron. Amara froze, breath catching in her throat. I'm so sorry," she stammered, bending down to gather the broken pieces. Her voice wasn't scared. It was embarrassed, tiny. The sound of a woman who was used to apologizing for things that weren't her fault. Ramon took a single step forward, not fast, not threatening, just closer. Amara didn't notice him. She kept picking up the shards with shaking hands, fingers brushing dangerously near the sharp ceramic edges. She hissed softly when one piece sliced her skin. Ramon's eyes narrowed when he saw the cut. But he didn't only see the fresh wound. He saw the faint yellow bruise on her wrist, half hidden behind her shirt cuff. The kind that comes from being grabbed too hard by someone who never learned gentleness. He saw another bruise along her forearm. Older, almost healed, but still visible if someone knew what to look for. He knew what to look for. "Amara," the cook called from the back, not even glancing up from the grill. "Are you good?" "Yes," she said quickly, even though her voice cracked. "I'm fine." She wasn't. Everyone could see she wasn't. But the only ones who reacted were the cartel men. Ramon watched her try to stand with the broken mug pieces in both hands. Her limp worsened. She winced, barely, subtly, but her eyes darted around to make sure no one saw the weakness. That was the moment Ramon decided something unspoken, something only his men understood by the way his posture changed. "Jefe," one of them murmured. Ramon didn't answer. He didn't need to. His focus stayed on her. Amara approached the trash can and threw away the shards. A few customers whispered, but quickly quieted when they realized the cartel was watching. Her heartbeat pounded in her chest. She placed a hand against her thigh again, massaging the spot where her limp originated. Her fingertips brushed her knee. She flinched. Ramon noticed that too. Amara reached behind the counter to grab a towel, but her hand trembled again, and the stack of napkins toppled over with a soft rustle. Her cheeks flushed. Humiliation washed over her like heat. Why tonight? Why her leg? Why in front of everyone? She knelt down to gather the napkins, the motion sending a sharp jolt up her thigh. Her breath trembled. She grit her teeth and forced it down. No one moved to help her, except him. Ramon took another step forward. The floorboards gave a soft groan under his weight. Amara didn't look up at first, thinking it was another customer, but then she felt the shift in the room. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from fear, but from anticipation. Slowly, she lifted her head. Ramon was standing right in front of her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Amara's breath caught, and her eyes widened, not because he looked dangerous, but because he looked concerned. A strange expression to see on the face of a cartel lieutenant. She shot to her feet, wobbling slightly. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to cause—" Her sentence ended when her knee buckled again. Ramon moved instantly. One hand shot out, steadying her by the elbow, not gripping, not controlling, just steadying, firm enough to keep her from falling, gentle enough to make sure she didn't feel trapped. Her eyes darted to his hand, then to his face, then back again. "I'm okay," she whispered, embarrassed as she regained balance. Ramon didn't let go until he was sure she was steady. Then he spoke, low, calm, steady. "Sit," he said. I can't," she replied. "I'm working." "Sit," he repeated, not forceful, not commanding, just inevitable. She hesitated, but her leg throbbed so badly that she obeyed, lowering herself onto the stool near the counter. The entire diner was watching now. Ramon crouched beside her, looking at her knee. She tried to pull her leg back instinctively, but his expression softened just enough to stop her from doing it. His eyes traveled from her limp to her trembling hand, to the bruises on her wrist. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that wasn't anger, but something darker and heavier. "Who hurt you?" The question hit the room like a dropped gun. Fork stopped mid-air. The cook froze over the grill. A couple in the booth nearest the window slowly lowered their heads. Amara blinked, confusion flooding her face. I don't know what you mean. No one hurt." Ramon's expression didn't change. His gaze shifted to her wrist, the faint bruises, then to her knee, the swelling she thought she'd concealed with her stockings, then back to her face, reading every micro-expression she tried to hide. "Don't lie to me," he said quietly. One of his men stepped behind him, cracking his knuckles, eyes scanning the diner as if measuring every possible threat. Another shifted his coat, revealing the glint of metal beneath, not to scare her, but because they were preparing to move. Amara's breath hitched. "I'm not lying," she whispered, her voice shaking even though she tried to steady it. "I just fell, that's all." Ramon leaned closer, not invading her space, but removing the possibility of her hiding behind half-truths. His voice dropped to a murmur only she could hear. "You limp when you put weight on your left leg. That's not a fall." His eyes flicked to the bruise on her wrist. "And someone grabbed you hard enough to leave this." Then to the older bruise on her forearm. "And that?" Amara swallowed hard. Her throat worked slowly, painfully. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to deny it again, maybe to explain, maybe to finally break. But nothing came out. Her hands shook in her lap. The men behind Ramon stood straighter, their bodies all shifting in silent synchronization, as if waiting for one command, one name, one direction. Ramon's voice remained calm, steady, unshakable. "Tell me," he said softly, "who hurt you?" Amara's lips parted, but before a single word could escape, the bell above the diner door chimed again. Everyone turned. The man walking in wasn't part of the Sombra cartel. He wasn't a customer either. He was someone Amara recognized instantly. Her face drained of color. Her breath hitched. The tremor in her hand became a full shake. Ramon saw all of it. every flicker of fear she tried to hide, and his jaw clenched slowly, dangerously. His men straightened, hands dropping near their jackets. The entire diner froze. The man who walked in smirked when he saw her, and Amara whispered the name Ramon had been waiting for, but too quietly for anyone else to hear. For a moment, Amara didn't breathe. The man standing in the doorway didn't need an introduction. His presence alone was enough to freeze her pulse. His smirk was the same, his eyes still cold, sharp, predatory. Even the way he leaned against the doorframe, as if he owned the space he entered, hadn't changed. Dante Cruz, her past, her fear, her unfinished nightmare. But Amara did what she always did, what she had survived by doing. She pretended. "I'm fine," she whispered, forcing her gaze away from him. But it wasn't just fear in her voice, it was a learned instinct, the kind that came from being trained over time to minimize pain, to deny it before anyone could use it against her, to make herself small so she could survive. Ramon heard the lie the moment it left her lips. His eyes didn't leave her face, not even when Dante's footsteps crossed the diner, not when customers slipped out quietly, sensing danger, not when his men angled themselves subtly behind him. Amara straightened her back, trying to mask the tremble in her breath. "I'm okay," she repeated, louder this time. "Really? I'm just clumsy." The word clumsy came out too fast. Practiced. Ramon's jaw tightened. "Clumsy people don't flinch when someone walks in," he murmured. Amara's eyes lifted to his, widening slightly. He wasn't accusing her, he was recognizing her. Ramon had seen this fear before, on sidewalks at 3 a.m., on faces of women dragged into bad deals, on men who owed money to the wrong people, on people who lived under someone else's control. This wasn't fear of the Sombra cartel, this was fear of one man. And that man had just walked back into her life. Dante approached the counter slowly, his eyes never leaving Amara. There was something territorial in the way he stared, a claim, a history, a threat wrapped in a smirk. "Well, well," Dante said softly. "Didn't expect to see you limping around here." Amara's fingers gripped the counter. She didn't answer. Ramon didn't move, but the air around him hardened. His men subtly shifted positions. Not enough to draw attention, but enough that every exit was suddenly covered. Dante's eyes flicked toward Ramon, then to the three men behind him. "Didn't know she had new friends," he chuckled. "These ones look expensive." Ramon didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence carried more weight than a threat ever could. Amara swallowed hard and forced a tight smile. "Dante, please," she whispered. "I'm working." "That wasn't my question," he replied, eyes narrowing. "But you can answer later." He tapped the counter twice, turned, and walked out of the diner as if he left a stain behind. Ramon watched him go. His men did too. But none of them moved, not yet. Amara exhaled shakily, her shoulders collapsing just a little. The tiniest surrender. When she turned back to the counter, she winced. Her knee throbbed again, but she pretended it didn't. She grabbed a pitcher of water, trying to resume her shift, trying to pretend nothing happened, trying to convince Ramon she didn't need help. But her hands shook so badly the water sloshed over the rim. Ramon stepped closer. "Stop," he said quietly. Amara froze. His tone wasn't demanding. It was steady, grounding, the kind of voice people listen to because they trust it, not because they fear it. "You're hurt," he said. "I'm not," she whispered. Ramon lifted his gaze to meet hers fully. "Don't lie to me." Amara looked away, her eyes glossing. She swallowed hard. I can handle it. I didn't ask if you could handle it. She hesitated. The words she wanted to say were trapped behind fear and old habits. She didn't owe Ramon anything, but for reasons she couldn't explain, the truth hovered at the back of her throat. Before she could speak, the cook called out, "Table 6 needs their check." Amara almost looked relieved. She grabbed the bill and placed it on the table with practiced speed, or at least she tried. Her limp was worse now. She had to grip the edge of the counter just to move. Ramon's men watched her with a displeasure that wasn't directed at her. They exchanged looks, silent, knowing. "Jefe," one murmured, "she's not clumsy." "No," Ramon said softly, "she's scared." Amara reached the table, placing the check with a smile that cracked too easily. The customer left a tip. Ramon approached the table slowly without making a scene. He picked up the coins the customer left, slipped a slim card underneath them, and set the money back down exactly where it was. It was subtle, silent, barely noticeable, but it was deliberate. Amara returned moments later, collecting the tip. Her fingers brushed the card, black, simple, with only a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no logo, just a lifeline disguised as anonymity. Her brows lifted slightly. She looked up. Ramon didn't even glance her way. He was mid-conversation with one of his men, voice low, expression unreadable. But when Amara tucked the card into her apron pocket, Ramon's eyes flicked toward her for half a second, just enough to acknowledge it, just enough to say, "You're not alone." Amara's throat tightened. When the Sombra cartel finally stood to leave, customers relaxed. Voices rose again, music hummed back to life. The diner returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after 4 cartel members had eaten in silence. But Amara didn't feel normal, not with Dante returning. Not with her limp worsening, not with the bruises she tried to forget pulsing beneath her skin. She wiped down the counter long after it was clean, pretending to work just to keep her hands busy. When her shift ended, she grabbed her bag, pulled her jacket tighter, and stepped out into the cold night. Her breath fogged in the air. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars, a flickering street lamp, and the hum of insects, the kind of quiet that made her skin crawl. She moved toward her old sedan, her limp heavier in the cold. Halfway there, she froze. Dante was leaning against the hood of her car, his arms folded, his smile slow, poisonous, his eyes reflecting the street lamp's flicker like they were feeding on the light. "Missed me?" he asked softly. Amara's heart dropped into her stomach. Her grip tightened on her bag. "Dante, please, not tonight." He pushed off the car and stepped toward her. "Why not tonight? Because you got new friends now, those cartel boys." He stopped mid-sentence. Something shifted behind Amara. Dante's smirk faltered. He looked up, past her shoulder, his posture stiffening just a little. Amara didn't turn around. She didn't need to. The air had changed, and the way Dante's jaw clenched told her everything she needed to know. Someone else was watching, not a stranger, not a passerby. Someone who had been watching since she clocked out. Someone who followed her not to intimidate her, but to protect her. Someone from the Sombra cartel. Dante's voice lowered. "You should have stayed scared of me." He stepped back slowly, eyes darting between Amara and the shadow behind her. "Because they can't protect you forever." He walked away before the shadow stepped fully into the light. Amara's breath trembled. She finally turned, and her eyes met the cold, steady gaze of one of Ramon's men. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply nodded once, slow and deliberate. A silent message. "We saw everything. We're here. He won't touch you without going through us first. Amara swallowed hard, unable to decide if she felt safer or more afraid. Because if the sombre cartel was watching her, Dante Cruz surely wasn't going to walk away quietly. Dante's footsteps faded into the darkness, but their echoes stayed behind, clinging to Amara's skin long after he disappeared. She stood frozen beside her car, gripping her bag so tightly her fingers ached. The sombre cartel enforcer, the shadow who had stepped forward, didn't approach her. He simply watched until she unlocked her car door, lowered herself inside, and drove away. Only when her taillights vanished did he pull out his phone. Ramon answered before the first ring finished. "She's safe," the man said. "For now," Ramon replied. His voice was quiet, thoughtful. "Follow him." The enforcer melted into the night, heading after Dante. Dante Cruz didn't walk like a man with purpose. He walked like a man who believed the world owed him something. Shoulders loose, head high, arrogance dripping from every step. Ramon's men followed at a distance, 10 paces behind, sometimes 20, sometimes closer, depending on the shadows. Dante never once looked back. He thought he was untouchable. He didn't know the Sombra cartel was studying him like a target. Dante lit a cigarette behind the convenience store, checking his phone. His messages were arrogant, vulgar, voice notes full of threats, demands, and possessive rage. Ramon listened to one later that night. A voice note sent to Amara weeks ago. Still unopened, still sitting in her inbox. "You belong to me, Ama. Don't make me come get you." Ramon's hand tightened around the phone. The deeper his men dug, the uglier it became. Dante Cruz once claimed Amara like she was an object, showing up at her job, controlling where she went, tracking who she talked to. He wasn't part of any real cartel. He was the kind they called a stray dog with a borrowed bite, someone who used the name of a rival gang to intimidate people who didn't know better. But his violence was real. The limp Amara hid? Not an accident, not a fall, not clumsiness. It came from one night, 3 months ago, after Amara refused to get in Dante's car. He dragged her by the wrist, the same wrist bruised tonight, and threw her against the pavement when she fought back. Her knee hit first. Ramon heard this from a gas station clerk who watched it happen and did nothing. The clerk kept talking, but Ramon didn't hear the rest. His jaw was rigid, his eyes darkened. This wasn't cartel business anymore. This was something else, something personal. At 2:14 a.m., Ramon called a meeting. His men gathered in the back room of their warehouse, brick walls, dim lights, the smell of cold steel lingering in the air. Ramon stood in front of them with that stillness he carried everywhere, the kind that needed no shouting or threats to command loyalty. "Dante Cruz used violence to control her," he said calmly. "He thinks she's property." No one spoke. They didn't need to. Some fates were decided without debate. Ramon continued. "She's not our enemy. She's not a pawn. She's a civilian who crossed paths with a dog wearing stolen colors." A murmur rippled through the room. "We don't touch her," he said. "We guard her." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The room grew even quieter. A man near the doorway frowned. "Jefe." "Why her?" Ramon didn't answer immediately. He remembered the limp, the tremor in her voice, the way she held her pain like she believed she deserved it. He thought of something else, too. A memory he had buried long ago, of a woman with the same quiet fear in her eyes. A long breath left him. "Because someone once protected my mother when I was too young to do it," he finally said. "I pay that debt forward." No one asked another question. Orders were orders, so the protection began, quiet, unseen, steady. Amara didn't know that 2 cars followed her home that night. She didn't know that the Sombra cartel had stationed a man across the street from her apartment, watching her building with a hood pulled over his face. She didn't know that Ramon called twice to confirm she made it inside safely. She didn't know that, while she slept with one hand under her cheek and the other curled to her chest, someone stood guard beneath her window until sunrise. She didn't know any of it, but she felt it, not immediately, not with gratitude. At first, it terrified her. The next morning, she opened her door to find a bag of groceries neatly placed on the welcome mat. Fresh fruit, milk, cereal, bread, no note. She swallowed hard, looking up and down the hallway. No one. That afternoon, when she twisted her key in her apartment door, she realized the lock didn't stick anymore. The door opened smoothly. Someone had fixed it. Not the building manager, he never fixed anything. Then, at the diner, she found a box behind the counter. Inside was a pair of black, slip-resistant work shoes, better than anything she could afford, her exact size. She stared at them for a long time. Her boss didn't buy them, her co-workers didn't know her size. Dante would never do anything kind, so the only explanation left terrified her. She stepped outside the back door and scanned the parking lot. There, near the far end, leaning against a black SUV, was one of the men from the night before. Not Ramon, but one of his shadows. He didn't approach her, he didn't wave, he didn't even lift his chin. He simply stood there, arms crossed, watching the building with bored vigilance. Amara's heartbeat stumbled. Was she being protected or watched? Her fear made her want to run, but her relief made her stay still. Sometimes safety feels like danger when you've only known danger wearing a kind smile. As the days passed, the fear softened. Every night a car was parked across from her building. Different cars, different drivers, same silent presence. Every shift, she saw someone from the Sombra cartel sitting in a booth, never causing trouble, never lingering, never staring, just present. One left a $20 bill under a coffee cup he never touched. Another tipped her more than the meal cost. A third gave her a nod when she limped slightly. A nod that held understanding, not pity. By the 4th day, Amara stopped pretending she didn't notice. By the 5th, she started feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Not fully, not completely, but safer than she was when Dante owned her days and nights. Safer than she had felt when she walked home clutching her keys like a knife. Safer than she had felt when she lied to herself, whispering, "I'm fine, I'm just clumsy." But fear returned on a Friday night. The diner was busy, orders stacking, customers loud, plates clattering. Amara worked the late shift, weaving through tables, ignoring her sore knee. Around midnight she noticed 2 men whispering in the far booth. She recognized one of them instantly. Dante's cousin. The one who used to drive him around. The one who laughed when Dante belittled her. He watched her like she was prey. Her stomach tightened. She moved faster, dropping off plates, avoiding eye contact. At closing time, her co-worker, Lily, a sweet 19-year-old with blonde curls, walked outside to smoke. Amara followed seconds later, but she stopped short when she saw Lily's cigarette lying smashed on the ground, her phone on the pavement, her jacket abandoned by the dumpster, her voice gone. Amara's throat closed. The parking lot was empty. Too empty. Her hands shook as she backed away and ran inside. "Ramon," she whispered, pulling the card from her apron pocket with trembling fingers. But before she could dial, a text message lit up her phone. A number she didn't recognize, no name, no emojis. Just 4 chilling words: "You should have listened." Attached was a picture, Lily, in a car, duct tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. Amara's breath shattered. She covered her mouth with her hand as tears burned her eyes. A shadow suddenly fell across the diner floor, one she recognized instantly. Ramon. He had arrived before she even made the call. His voice was calm, controlled, too controlled. What happened? Amara lifted her shaking phone. Ramon took one look, and the fury that lit his eyes was cold, lethal. He turned to his men who had just stepped through the door. His voice was low, sharp, deadly. "Find him!" Amara's breath trembled. Ramon looked at her, not with pity, but with a promise. "We're ending this tonight." The moment Ramon saw the picture of Lily, duct-taped and terrified in the back of a car, something inside him snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a bone breaking under too much pressure. He didn't yell, he didn't curse, he didn't even breathe differently. He simply slipped his phone into his pocket, turned to his men and said, "Get the car." It wasn't an order, it was a verdict. The sombre cartel mobilized in seconds. 3 black SUVs pulled out from the diner parking lot, engines silent, headlights off. The night swallowed them whole as they drove through back alleys and industrial roads, following a trail only Ramon knew how to read. The hideout Dante used wasn't a real cartel base. It was a rusted auto shop on the outskirts of town, broken windows, graffiti, a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a dying insect. A perfect place for someone like Dante, a man who wanted to look powerful without actually being powerful. Ramon stepped out first. He didn't draw a gun, he didn't need one. The men guarding the entrance recognized him immediately, their postures stiffened. One cigarette fell from his lips. "Ramon," one whispered, "this isn't your turf." Ramon kept walking. "My turf," he said softly, "is wherever a man hurts women." The guard swallowed hard and reached for his weapon. Ramon didn't break his stride. The second guard stepped forward, hand hovering over his waistband. "We don't want trouble." Ramon's eyes locked onto his. "Then don't create any." The men stood frozen as he walked past them, his own cartel slipping behind him like shadows. Inside, the warehouse stank of gasoline and fear. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering. Tools hung from rusted hooks. A car without a hood sat on a lift, its engine exposed like organs in surgery. And in the corner, Lily, bound to a chair, eyes wide, tears streaking her cheeks. She made a small, strangled sound when she saw Ramon. Not fear. Relief. Dante wasn't there, but 2 of his men were, pacing, arguing, moving nervously like they knew their time was running out. "She's bait," one said. "Dante said this girl is his leverage." "Leverage for what?" the other demanded. "To bring Amara back." Ramon stopped mid-step. The room grew quieter, colder, thicker. The second man continued without realizing death was listening. "He said she owes him, that she ran off owing him money, that she belongs to him." Ramon's jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he stepped closer, deliberate, calm, a storm wearing human skin. The men finally noticed him. One reached for his pocket. He never made it. Ramon slammed him into the wall with a single move, quick, fluid, controlled. The man crumpled, gasping for air. The other swung a wrench. Ramon dodged, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted until the wrench hit the floor with a metallic clang. He leaned in close. "Where is he?" Ramon asked. "Not here," the man stuttered. "He went to get her, the waitress. Amara, he said—" Ramon didn't wait for the rest. He released the man and turned to his men. "Untie her," he said, nodding at Lily. Lily sobbed as the ropes fell away. "You're okay," one of the enforcers murmured, guiding her gently. "You're safe." But Ramon knew better. No one was safe while Dante was loose. No one was safe while Amara was home alone. Meanwhile, Amara stood inside her dim apartment, staring through the peephole at the black SUV parked across the street. Her breath froze in her chest. It wasn't one of Ramon's. This one had tinted windows, too dark, too reflective, and an energy she recognized instantly. Dante. Her knees weakened, her stomach twisting violently. She backed away from the door, hand trembling as she reached for the card Ramon had left her. The black card with the silver number. Her lifeline. She typed a message with shaking fingers. "He's here." She didn't expect a reply so fast, but less than 10 seconds later, her phone buzzed. Ramon. "Don't open the door, I'm close." Her breath hitched. Close? She didn't know where he lived, didn't know where he worked, didn't know a single detail about the man who suddenly cared if she lived or died. But she believed him. Her eyes darted to the kitchen window. Shadows moved outside. A silhouette leaned against her building. Her heart sank. Dante wasn't waiting. He was hunting. Downstairs, Dante stepped out of the SUV. He rolled his shoulders, cracking his neck. His boots echoed on the pavement as he crossed the lot. He didn't rush. He didn't sneak. He didn't hide. He wanted her to hear him coming. He wanted her fear to blossom before he reached her. He stopped at the front door of the apartment building, tried the handle, and laughed when it didn't open. "Think a lock can stop me, Amma?" he muttered. He looked up toward her window. Slowly, like he could feel her watching. Then he took a step back, then another, and then he rammed his shoulder into the door, hard. The metal rattled. Amara jumped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dante rammed it again, harder. The lock, newly repaired by Ramon's men, struggled under the assault. Amara staggered backward into her living room, her phone clutched in her shaking hand. He wasn't trying to get inside, he was getting inside. And she was alone. Ramon was 3 minutes away, 3 minutes too far, 3 minutes that felt like 3 lifetimes. He drove like the night itself parted for him, weaving through empty streets, running lights, ignoring every speed limit ever written. His men were behind him, engines snarling. But none of them mattered, not compared to the single thought repeating in Ramon's mind. Don't let him reach her, not her, not again. Upstairs, Amara heard the third blow. The door finally splintered, just a crack, but enough for her soul to fracture. She stumbled back until her spine hit the wall. Her hands shook violently. She typed another message, tears blurring her vision. "He's breaking in!" Ramon's response came instantly. "Ramon, I'm almost there. Stay away from the door." Dante's fourth hit was the loudest. The metal bent inward, the frame cracked. Amara's breath became a thin, desperate whisper. "Please," she mouthed, though no one could hear her. Dante stepped back one last time, braced himself, and charged. The door burst inward, wood splintered, metal bent, the deadbolt ripped through the wall. The hallway lights flickered as the impact shook the building. Amara screamed. The door slammed open so hard it echoed through the entire floor. Dante stepped inside, smirking, triumphant, predatory. "Miss me?" he whispered. And as he stepped forward, a shadow moved at the far end of the hallway, not Dante's, not Amara's. Someone else had arrived. Amara's breath hitched as she stumbled into the stairwell, her injured leg dragging. Every step echoed against the concrete walls like a countdown. Dante's shadow stretched long, blocking the exit. "You thought you could run from me," he sneered, advancing slowly. "Thought you could hide your debts?" Amara's panic clawed at her chest. She pressed herself against the wall, shaking. "Please, someone help me," she screamed, the sound raw and desperate. The click of heavy boots echoed from the stairwell entrance. Ramon appeared, not yelling, not swinging, but moving with an unnerving calm. Every step exuded control. His eyes locked on Dante, and for the first time Amara felt a flicker of hope. Dante smirked, trying to mask his unease. "Ah, Ramon. Come to play hero? Or are you here to get yourself hurt?" Ramon didn't respond. He simply held up a folder, thick with papers and photos. "I don't need to fight you," he said softly. "Everything you've done, every shipment, every threat, I've documented it all." Dante's smirk faltered. He laughed, but it came out brittle. "You think the cops will believe a story like this?" "They won't just believe it," Ramon replied. "They're on their way." A distant wail of sirens began to swell, growing louder with each passing second. Dante's confidence crumbled. He glanced at the street, then back at Ramon and Amara, realizing he'd been outmaneuvered. "Wait! This isn't over!" Dante spat, backing toward the stairwell door. Ramon's voice was calm, unyielding. "It is for tonight." And just like that, Dante bolted, disappearing into the shadows as the first police cars screeched to a halt outside. The flashing red and blue lights painted the stairwell walls, and Amara finally exhaled, relief and terror mingling in her chest. Ramon helped her steady herself, his hand firm around hers. "You're safe now," he said. But even as he spoke, the tension lingered, because in their world, safety was never permanent. Somewhere in the alley behind them, Dante's figure vanished. But the danger, the fear, and the revenge were far from over. The morning headlines screamed from every newsstand. Dante's gang, crippled by massive crackdown. Anonymous tip leads police to high-profile arrests. Amara's hands shook as she sipped her coffee behind the counter, eyes glued to the newspaper. Every detail matched what Ramon had promised, her tormentor's empire unraveling one piece at a time. A soft knock on the diner door pulled her from the headlines. She looked up to see Ramon leaning casually in the doorway, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "You're safe now," he said, voice low but confident. "He won't touch you again." Amara blinked, disbelief and gratitude swirling in her chest. Why help me? You're not just anyone," Ramon interrupted gently, stepping closer. His hand brushed the counter near hers, steady and reassuring. "Someone once helped me when I was limping too." Her chest tightened. His words carried a weight she couldn't fully grasp. Pain, loss, and now protection. She wanted to ask more, to know his story, but something in his gaze told her. Some things weren't ready to be spoken aloud. Over the next few days, Amara noticed subtle changes. The police who had questioned her were professional but careful, leaving her alone once they knew she was under Ramon's protection. And slowly, she began to understand the Sombra cartel in a way the world never would. These men, feared, dangerous, painted as villains, were guardians to those caught in the crossfire. They didn't hurt civilians. They protected them. For the first time since Dante cornered her in that stairwell, Amara felt a flicker of safety, a small, fragile hope. But peace, she would soon learn, was fleeting. That evening, as she closed the diner and turned the sign to "Closed," a shadow moved across the empty parking lot. Her stomach sank. Dante, eyes wild, desperate, and unpredictable, he stared at her from the edge of the lot. His empire crumbled, his pride shattered, but his obsession remained. Amara's heart raced. Ramon appeared behind her in a blink, silent as a shadow, hand resting lightly on the grip at his side. "You don't get a second chance," he said, calm, deadly, and unwavering. Dante's lips twisted into a snarl. "This isn't over. Not yet." And with that he vanished into the darkness, leaving only the echo of his promise and the realization that the next move would decide Everything. Cliffhanger. The calm after the storm was just an illusion. A new, deadlier game had begun. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly as Amara locked the door, ready to leave for the night. The street was quiet. Too quiet. A sudden movement caught her eye. Dante. He lunged from the shadows, eyes wild, fury twisting every line of his face. Amara froze. Her legs, still weak from months of pain and fear, trembled. Before she could react, Ramon was there. No shouting, no theatrics. Just calm, unshakable presence. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a silent anchor. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. Dante sneered. "You think you've won?" "You've taken everything from me!" Ramon didn't flinch. He reached into his coat and held up a folder, the same one from the stairwell, now thicker, more complete. "Actually," he said, voice steady, "the federal warrant issued this morning thinks differently." Dante's eyes flicked down at the papers. His panic was immediate, raw. He tried to turn and run, but in an instant, men from the Mafia Cartel appeared, surrounding him. Their stance wasn't threatening to Amara, only firm, controlling. Not to hurt, but to ensure Dante faced justice alive. Amara felt her knees give way, relief washing over her in heavy, trembling waves. She sank to the curb, covering her face with her hands. Ramon crouched beside her, steadying her with a hand on her back. "It's okay," he said softly. "It's over. For now." She lifted her head, eyes wide and watery. "Is it finally over?" He smiled faintly, almost hidden in the shadows. "For you." "Yes. For him. It just started." The distant sound of police sirens grew louder, closing in, while Dante was led away in cuffs. The air smelled of rain and asphalt, of endings and beginnings. Amara rose to her feet, testing her balance. For the first time in months, she didn't limp. Each step felt stronger, surer, like a weight had been lifted from her body and soul. Ramon stood beside her, silent but present. She glanced at him, a small, grateful smile forming. The street was quiet again, but this time it felt different, safe, promising, full of possibility. For the first time in a long time, Amara felt free. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.